going to work on a Lemax tabletop display. Lemax. No sound, just lights, but it's got a problem. You turn it on, this is supposed to open, and it doesn't. It's kind of, you might be able to see this is glowing. It should have opened. I don't think the motor's strong enough to lift this spring. But what happens is I mean, the mechanism works. You'll see here in just a moment. It takes see, the arm moves up, and the guy lifts. And it closes just fine. It just cannot open. So either the mechanism that drives it is slipping, or these springs, which are really tight, I will have to say these are really tight springs, are just too, see, there you go, it's trying to lift it and it's having a really hard time. So today's project is to find out why. So turn it off. Remove the incoming power. Add some more light. And peel the bottom. Try and get it off as one big piece of foam so it can be reattached and not puzzled back together. If not, you can always just use some foam you can get at a hobby store or a craft store, trace it, and then hot glue it on. Well, be able to get the foam off. We're going to set it out of the way with the sticky side up. And it is hot glued. So we are going to turn on the hot glue gun. Reset it. And this is really exciting. But basically I'm reheating as careful as I can. This doesn't appear to be very careful. The glue or resin they used to break the bottom. Now, I have my heat gun a little cooler than normal. I normally have it around 240 to 250 degrees centigrade. Right now it's at 175. It still will melt the flesh from your fingers, so be careful. But it helps prevent distortion of the plastic bases. It takes a little longer, but you don't get this plastic doesn't warp as fast. It gives you more time. So the object's not to re-break it. And this one's a little more fidgety because I'm trying not to snap any of the limbs off the tree. the glue separated. Trying to see if there's anything inside, such as a screw, I need to be concerned with. Nope. You can kind of see through here. Here's the mechanism that goes back and forth to push open the lid and then of course let it close. So now we need to figure out why she doesn't want to come out all the way. Sometimes the popping noises are scary, sometimes they're your friend. Hopefully in my case they're my friend. Alright, well this little guy is going to be kind of a pain. Thought it might have been easy. It's just a small little tabletop piece. It truly does not want to come apart. Cannot see what it's caught on. Here's the motor and the drive mechanism. Yeah, it might actually be caught on the coffin itself. Yep, that's what it feels to be. This lid looks like it goes all the way through. And I see slack on the cables for the lights. That one. And this one. They have slack, so they shouldn't be binding. I think we're just catching on this coffin lid as a tight fit. Apparently there's also a piece of glue. Piece of glue fell inside. I'm trying to get it out so it's not stuck in the gearing. There we go. There's the glue I was talking about. Looks like I disconnected the lid. Hopefully I didn't break it. There's one tight spring. There's a little coil spring with a hook. try and put this lid back on, and we're going to test it without the shell so we can see if it's binding or if it's slipping, which honestly is probably slipping because this drive belt is real sloppy, which I'll show you here in just a few moments once I try and get this lid reassembled. Not quite how it's supposed to work. And yep, the problem is the drive belt. I don't know if you can see it spinning. Try and zoom in. If I hold it, there's a lot of play. So, needs a belt, and unfortunately, in the process of taking this through, there's a little piece of plastic that was inset right here has snapped off. So I'm going to have to fix the lid. Actually, it didn't snap off. I see what it did. We'll let him cycle one more time. Go back out. Let's get this lid back on. Kill the power. There we go. These wires aren't... Oh, look at that. Cluttered workstations. Alright, let's see if we can get a better shot here. Drive mechanism's right there. It's spinning. Casket tried to open, or coffin, but it's just slipping on the pulley. So that little belt right there is the malfunction. Let's take apart this transmission and see if we can match up this belt. Back to the exciting part. Apparently the casket, or coffin, technically, has to be unscrewed. Since there is a screw for the cover of the gears underneath it. And the coffin appears to be held in with 3 screws. 3 screws and something else. I want to say it's glue. There we go. Yeah, it's glue. Glue and a small spring. I haven't moved enough I can get to this 4th screw, or 5th screw actually. Alright. Try and carefully pull this apart without losing all the gears. So here's the offender. Little black drive belt. That is no longer elasticy and very slick, and it looks like it's been slipping for a while, and there's a small chunk missing. Let's see what I got for belts. This belt might work. This belt might be a little too tight, but we're gonna test it out. And if anybody's curious where I get my belts from and all my parts, sometimes you can find little lots of parts on Amazon or eBay or Wish. This belt came out of an old electronic device I tore apart. That no longer needed its components. Instead of going to the scrap yard in one big piece, it went to the scrap yard in a whole bunch of little pieces, as I scavenged it for parts for future endeavors. Alright, what I'm trying to do that you probably can't tell on camera is I am trying to line up all the gears back into their respective holes, at the same time of stretching this pulley and getting it in its respective hole. Of course, this new pulley is this belt's a lot tighter, so it's, you know, giving me a little grief. But we're in it for the payoff at the end, so payoff is when we're done, it'll work. Positive thinking. In case you're wondering why I was using an X-Acto knife, it's because the back of the blade is a lot thinner than a screwdriver, allowing me to push the shaft over into its indentation so all the gears line up. Anybody that's worked with plastic transmissions or even metal ones from RC cars or Lemax houses knows that there's a shaft behind each one of these little bumps, and that shaft is what holds your gears in alignment. And sometimes your finger, generally your finger is too fat, and a spudger is too wide, which is this guy, and a screwdriver is thin, but again it's too fat. Whereas an X-Acto knife, especially using the back side of the blade, is nice and thin and allows you to get it in alignment. So now we're going to realign the coffin. Underneath the coffin, right in here, is a fork. And there's a pin that when the coffin opens, it pushes the fork up and then pulls the fork down. When you slide the coffin back onto its place, you need to try and get that pin lined up. If they didn't put that little screw underneath, it wouldn't be such a big deal, but unfortunately Somebody designed it like that. And we have to deal with it. Okay. Back to more of the excitement. Sticking screws back in. I'm just going to set one screw in to help keep my alignment so the whole coffin doesn't move while I get this fork aligned. See, that was a lot easier. Open the lid, angle the fork, get it back on its pin. And technically it should readjust itself once we turn it back on. I'm not going to turn it on until all the screws are back in, so nothing pops out of place. Since you are screwing in the plastic, do not over torque them. It'll break the plastic bosses. And then you're going to have to rely on super glue and a really good chance of the inability of ever repairing it again. Alright, this belt might be too tight. Something is binding, so I'm spinning it by hand to try and see what is the cause. Alright, lid's closing. Micro switch is engaged. Everything's turning freely, so let's give it a whirl. What I'm doing is I'm seeing if I over tighten the screws by loosening them. The motor's trying to turn, but it can't. There's a good chance this belt I put in is technically too tight. So by loosening up the gear box, it's supposed to allow them to turn better. Because it is real tight in here. No, that could be part of it. Let's try that. Alright, nope. So, let's see. That belt's too big. think that belt's too big too. So, trial and error. Take it apart, do it again. Original belt, a little over an inch. This belt is a little under an inch. This belt about an inch and a half. This belt a little over an inch. Not quite the scientific way of measuring. But sometimes you gotta do with what you gotta do. These are the hard black rubber belts. This one is a yellow belt, which is a little bit more elasticy. So we're going to try this one now. Still going to have a similar issue in reassembly. It shouldn't be as bad, but it's still going to pose a slight problem. Par for the course. So to prevent the gears from falling out when I turn this on its side to try and pull the belt over the motor, I am going to stick a couple of screws in. And I'm using the back side of the razor knife just to give me a little bit more room to stick something larger in. I know you can't see what I'm doing, but what I'm doing is I was using the screwdriver and the razor knife to set the belt on the pulley of the motor. The pulley of the motor is about 1/8 of an inch above the base of the platform, so there's enough room that you can slide it in and stick it on. Alright, so we're gonna quickly test this with just a couple of screws and see if it works. And voila. It opened. Now let's see if it closes. Here we go. Alright, well I'm going to reassemble this and then we're going to test it reassembled. So, be back. Here you go. Fully reassembled. Hot glued it back together and re-adhered the base. And here it is in the dark with the guy coming out. I do not know why it's so blurry. Here we go. So we'll let it go through one more time with it not so blurry. But as you can see, it's back together. When you put this one back together, the bottom actually has alignment pins that pop into place. And then once it does, then the casket lid is perfectly aligned, or coffin lid, so that way it can open and close. So this tabletop piece is now done. and ready to go back into its display. Thank you for watching.